Very happy to be back at the Sravasti Abbey and having this chance to share some of my insights on the Diamond Sutra, the Vajrakata Sutra. So let us begin by chanting the Buddha's name 3 times and the Sutra opening Gatha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Let us just take a moment to appreciate the incredible conditions that had to come together for this session of Dharma studying to take place. The Buddha taught the Diamond Sutra thousands of years ago in a different language. And throughout the thousands of years, the sutra have traveled across India, across Asia, and come into America and the rest of the world. How many people make an effort to preserve the teaching, to translate the teaching, to study the teaching, to teach the sutra, so that today, so many thousands of miles away, so many thousands of years away, we can still be able to read, study, and follow this teaching. Such incredible conditions, incredible dependent arising. We are so fortunate, so blessed. So let's all bring forth this sincere mind, an open mind to receive the insights from this incredible sutra. Now I plan to introduce some of the so-called highlights from the first part of the Diamond Sutra. I'll begin with an introduction of the Chinese version. Now, the Diamond Sutra was introduced to the Chinese in the year 400 CE. That's when the great translator, great master Kumarajiva came to China and started to introduce the real meaning of Prajnaparamita, the Prajnaparamita scriptures. Was translated before him, but then left something to be desired, and he really perfected the translation. And he was the first one to translate the Diamond Sutra into Chinese. And over the next 300 years, it has been translated again 5 more times into Chinese. But still, the very first translation was by far the most popular, most important, most influential. And it is the standard by which all Chinese who study the Diamond Sutra studies. And there has been over 100 commentaries in Chinese written on the sutra. So you can see how incredibly popular it is. And many Chinese Buddhists would chant the Diamond Sutra every day, although I will not say that most of them deeply understand it. But the words that's rendered into Chinese is incredibly lucid, incredibly beautiful. And many of the lines are so quotable, they have assimilated into the Chinese culture. Even for non-Buddhists, they probably know some lines from the Diamond Sutra. And there's a picture of the oldest printed and dated book in the world, which, as you guess, is the Diamond Sutra, the Chinese version of the Diamond Sutra. It is dated at year 868, May 11th. Because there's a specific record on the sutra about when this was printed. And toward the left, you could see the beginning of the sutra. Thus have I heard once Buddha was at the great city of Sravasti and so on. Okay, we can still read it. And it is kept at the British Library in London. And when I visited London, I got to see it displayed in a glass case. It's just incredible. This will be the beginning of a scroll. So the Chinese, ancient Chinese, what they did is they will print this or write this on a piece of paper, and then they would tape the paper together, form a scroll, so it's unfolded. That's why all the Chinese sutras, the length is counted by scrolls. So the Diamond Sutra is only one scroll, which means probably 1,000 words also, around 1,000 words. By comparison, the Lotus Sutra is 7 scrolls or 7 fascicles. And the Yogacara Bhumi is 100 scrolls. Okay. And one of the important reasons that the Diamond Sutra was so popular in Chinese Buddhism was the many reasons. The text is just so incredibly beautiful and profound. But also another important reason probably is that in the Chan Buddhist lineage, the Chinese Zen lineage, the most important master besides Bodhidharma, who brought the Chan teaching to China, would be the 6th patriarch, Master Huineng. And he famously decided to become a monk upon hearing the Diamond Sutra being recited by a layperson. He was a woodcutter at the time. And when he heard it once, he said, I'm going to become a monk, study the Buddhism. And so he traveled across China from south to the north and then met his master, the 5th patriarch. And sometime later, when the 5th patriarch was explaining the Diamond Sutra to him, and when he came to about 1/3 of the way, at the line, the mind should act without abiding anything, he achieved enlightenment. And later on, he became the 6th patriarch of Chan Buddhism. He was the one that sort of revolutionarized Chan Buddhism and make it into from a small sect into a whole China phenomena. And he certainly valued the Diamond Sutra greatly, as have all the later Chan masters. My Shifu, the Grand Master Wei Jie, also emphasized many times the importance of studying the Diamond Sutra. In one of his last talks to the Sangha before he passed on, he again emphasized, he said, you all should read the Diamond Sutra 3 times a day. Soon afterwards, he passed away, he passed on. And I returned to the US, and during the pandemic, where I was doing solitary practice, I was doing this task to read a Diamond Sutra 3 times a day. And then one day, I came to the insight, well, I don't have to be so literal about reading the Diamond Sutra 3 times, so I decided to read it once and then focus on a particular passage and contemplate it. And that will be the second time I go over the Diamond Sutra. I will contemplate it deeply. There are actually many puzzles in the Diamond Sutra. Things that, what is really being conveyed? So you think about it deeply. And then the third time will be try to apply some of the teaching try to integrate that into your daily life. Try to practice it, either to meditate on it or to integrate into your daily tasks. So cultivation. This is what I come to call the ABC of studying the Dharma. Acquire, right? So that's listening and trying to understand correctly. And I can't really find a word that starts with B. That's what I need. So absorb. Absorb meaning you think about it deeply, reflect on it, you try to internalize and make that into part of your whole thinking, your whole way of looking at everything. So internalize it, absorb it. And C is cultivate, so you put it into practice. Okay, so I am currently teaching 3 online courses. Because it's online, there's a distance. So I try to teach it in a way that is ABC method. Okay, so through that, even though I taught the Diamond Sutra to the Sangha of Zhongtai Chan Monastery in Taiwan more than 10 years ago, through the last few years of this way of studying, I've come to appreciate so much more the layered insights from the Diamond Sutra. And I will go into that later. And so, no matter how well you think you understand the sutra, you keep on studying it. Don't feel at any point that, oh, I got it 100%. That would be dangerous. When you have that humble mind, even though no matter how much insight you have about the sutra, and no matter how many times you have taught this particular scripture, if you keep that open mind, you will always be able to find deeper layers of insight or meaning in the scripture. That is a case I have found with any sutra that I had a chance to really study. And in Chinese, it has been artificially divided into 32 sections. What that means is that a particular crown prince who is very into Buddhism, he decided, well, this is one long passage. I'm going to cut into sections, or not really cut it, but label it into different sections to help study. And that became really popular. So all the Chinese are familiar with the 36 sections, but we should understand it's not in the original sutra. And there are places where it's divided into sections, but you really should be reading it together. Okay, so just for reference. I don't think it's done in the Tibetan version, right? So, it could be kind of unmanageable when you just read it on and on and on. And it's helpful to divide into sections, but, you keep in mind that it's an artificial division. All right, having said that, there are many oddities, places that's very odd about the sutra. I will just name a few, not all of them, but a few. First of all, the name of the sutra is Vajra Cutter, right? Vajra we translate it as diamond. What does the diamond refer to? Does it refer to the defilement that is so tough that we need the sutra, the teaching to cut it through? That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that the Vajra, the diamond, refers to the prajna wisdom. It's the wisdom that is so hard that can penetrate through everything. It can penetrate to the very tough entanglement of our afflictions, of our defilements. So I don't think it's important to decide which one is the better interpretation, but these are possible. So apparently Sanskrit can be as vague or ambiguous as Chinese. All right, there seems to be a lot of repetition. For the uninitiated, he just repeats and repeats and repeats. And if you read the larger Prajna Paramita text, there's even more repetition. Even in the shortest Prajna Sutra, which is the Heart Sutra, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Mathematically, it seems to be saying the same thing 4 times. And that's what happened when I showed it to my math teacher in high school. He said, "You're just repeating it 4 times." But no, they are not really repetitions. What I found is that the Prajna Dharma, the Prajna Paramita is so subtle. It is so subtle that there are many different nuances. You really have to look at it from slightly different angles in order to fully appreciate the prajna, or the teaching of emptiness. And we can talk about that later. So they're not really repetitions. They are similar teaching from a slightly different angle, aimed at helping you to get a more and more refined understanding of this very profound and very subtle teaching that is called prajna, wisdom. And there are several places in the Dhamma Sutra where it goes, Buddha would say something, or Subhuti would say something, and why is it so? And then what follows? Supposed to be the explanation, right? But the explanation is more cryptic than the thing you aim to explain. Or you don't make the connection. Okay, why is it so? Because, and then you read this, and it's, but it doesn't seem to explain. So that is intriguing, and I try to figure it out. And when you do that, when you do figure out what the connection really is, you gain a deeper insight. What happens, I believe, is that Buddha and Subhuti, Subhuti is the foremost in what of Buddha's disciples? He, among the Buddha's foremost disciples, he's the foremost in understanding of emptiness. So Buddha and Subhuti, they have this very high-level dialogue. And there are things that's probably obvious to them, but not obvious to us. So they will skip. It's sort of like we need to connect the dots sometimes. Going from one passage to the next passage, you may have to connect the dots yourself. All right, so that's where also where the text seems to jump around, where the next passage it's not clear what the next passage's relationship is to the previous passage. Okay, that happens several times too. But if you make an effort to really see the connection, if you believe that Buddha just not saying whatever comes to his mind about prajna, but rather there is a deeper organization, why Buddha would teach this way, then you will be richly rewarded, and you will come to appreciate the intricate organization of the Diamond Sutra. Just like the Heart Sutra has a very intricate organization, and you're just amazed at the mind of these people. All right, and one of the things I challenge myself is to take each section of the Diamond Sutra and see how it can be used in your cultivation. In other words, don't treat any section as just knowledge, just teaching, but it's something you can apply. And we'll try to do that with the first 5 sections. All right, so let us now begin with the first section, Convocation of the Assembly. Now, the names of these sections are also given by the Crown Prince, which some people agree, some people don't agree, but it's okay. It's not part of the original sutra. Now, I'm going to recite this first section, and I want you to listen and try to feel the pace or the rhythm of the words. I believe that Kiramajiva, when he translated the Diamond Sutra, he took care to, in this first section, to convey the gracefulness of how Buddha conducted his daily life. Thus have I heard, once the Buddha was staying in Anathapindika's park at Jetavana Grove in Sravasti with a community of 1,250 monks. When it was mealtime, the world-honored one put on his robe, took his alms bowl, and went into the great city of Sravasti, going from house to beg for food. This done, he returned to his abiding place, finished the meal, put away his robe and bowl, washed his feet, arranged his seat, and sat down. So, to me, what this first section conveys is prajna in action. No words are spoken yet by the Buddha, but then this teaching has already started. Now, it's one of the oddities of Diamond Sutra. Why would such an important sutra begin with so ordinary description of such ordinary things, right? Unless it means something. It shows that the most profound wisdom is to be realized in the simplest actions, right? So live your everyday things as simple as taking up the bowl, begging for food, or receiving the offering, taking each bite, and clean the bowl afterwards, clean up after yourself. In those actions, Buddha is already demonstrating the prajna way of living. There's a story where a Chan disciple asked his master, he asked his Chan master, "Master, what is it like after you are enlightened?" Master says, "When you're hungry, you eat. When you are tired, you sleep." So the disciple said, "But that's what I do." Even though I'm not enlightened, that's what I do, right? The master says, "No, that's not what you do. When you're hungry, you think about all kinds of things. What am I eating today? Is this food good? Is it not good? Is it hard? Is it cold?" It's all kinds of conscious disturbances, right? So there's simplicity and prajna in when you're hungry, you just eat. Right? So that seems to be what the Buddha is demonstrating. And certainly, when you finish, you clean up after yourselves. So Buddha cleaned the bowl, washed his feet, and sat. So it's like when he needed to act, he acted, and when he finished acting, he returned to this state of stillness. His mind was in stillness. And so the stillness part is what we need to achieve nirvana, to achieve liberation. And the going out and begging for food and interacting with people is represents the bodhisattva practice. So in Mahayana Buddhism, we need to perfect both the nirvana practice, right? Cutting through all the defilements and afflictions. But we also need to liberate others. And we need to do that both, maintaining a balance. Okay? So you can read that into the first section. Also, clean up after ourselves. For example, in a monastery, you have positions. Sometimes you get transferred into a different position, and then you need to hand over the position to somebody else, to another monastic, right? Now, do you do it well? Do you give the person everything he or she needs to know, right? Don't just leave things entangled all over the place, and that the person, the new person, is in confusion for a month and try to figure things out. So always, right? Always complete what you set out to do in a considerate manner, right? So be considerate of others. So that's another thing we can read from the first section. Another thing I want to emphasize is the section where the phrase where Buddha returned to his abiding place. So he went on an alms round and he returned to his abiding place. So my Shifu, Grandmaster, teaches us to look at the sutra always from two angles. One is the phenomena from the, what's the action, what is the situation, what's the phenomena, and also the underlying meaning there. Can you read deeper meaning into the situation? So here, the phenomena is that Buddha went out and he came back. Big deal, we all do that, right? But no, there's more to that. Buddha went back to where he started. We come back, you come back to this monastery. Or the layperson goes back to his or her home. But is that the real home? Is that really your abiding place? Where's your home? Where do you return to? Yeah, we take the refuge. Refuge means to return and to rely. Before we know our home, rely on the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Once we know where we come from or where we return to, then we can walk the path ourselves, right? So where do you return to? Where is the place that you can truly abide? Where you can truly rest your mind? Where does your mind belong? That is your abiding place. So, in Chan Buddhism, the abiding place, you only know your abiding place when you are awakened, when you're enlightened. Oh, of course. But before that, always seeking. Try to find where that true peace is. That mental state, so to speak, we can always go back to, just like that. You will find it. You will find. That's why the Buddha is always at peace, no matter what happens. Because it's always there. It's just right here, right now. But you have to see it. And you got to practice. Even after enlightenment, awakening, you have to practice in order to be able to abide in it. Sustain your abidance in that true peace, the ultimate stillness of the mind. So Buddha returned to his abiding place. All right, and finally, about the first section, the verse, the words of the first section, of course, is repeated by Ananda and then recorded later on, represents the language prajna. We say that there are three types of prajna: the language prajna, the contemplation prajna, and reality prajna. Language prajna is the words or speech that try to convey the prajna teaching, right? But then when you hear the words, doesn't mean you understand prajna. So you have to contemplate, you have to meditate on it, you have to absorb it. So we use this passage or any passage in the Diamond Sutra to contemplate on what's the meaning that's being taught. We meditate on it. So that's the contemplation prajna. And reality prajna is where you have fully realized prajna paramita. And at that time, prajna paramita becomes the all-encompassing or the universal wisdom. It's the savrajna, is the wisdom of all those who are awakened. Yeah. So the Buddha is already in that state, and he demonstrates through his everyday actions so that we can contemplate on it. And then somebody recorded this so that we can see, even though we are not living at the time with the Buddha, we can try to imagine through the language prajna, through the words, how the Buddha acted and how his disciples follow him. And that is why in the following passage, in the second section, Shibuti began with, "Oh, wonderful Buddha, how you are mindful of the bodhisattvas always, how you are always guarding and protecting them and instructing them so well." Yeah? That is kind of odd because Buddha hasn't said anything. But Shibuti understood. He understood the first part of how Buddha is demonstrating the prajna teaching through his actions. So how well you guard and protect, are mindful and you instruct them so well. All right, that's the second section. All right, but before we finish the first section, I want to go through this part of acquire, absorb, and cultivation, the ABC. Acquire, so mentally review. After you study that first part, mentally review the main points that's being conveyed. So whether you study from the Geshe, or whether you study on your own, or you haven't just listened to what Jianhu Shi is saying, mentally review what are the main points being conveyed. Without looking at the text or looking at the notes, just take a couple minutes. What are some of the important points that I learned, that I found useful? Do that with every lecture you hear, yeah? And then the second part is absorb. So contemplate on the first section. For example, where's my abiding place that I return to? Where's my true home? Where's my true home? Do you know? How well do you know it? Have you found it? If you haven't, well, have faith you will, as long as you continue on this path. Because you look at people in this world, they're always seeking. Always seeking. And many people, they think that, oh, if I get married, I'll find my home, right? If I have children, I'll find my home. If I get this wonderful job, I'll find my home. If I make so much money, I'll find my home. If I become, this president of the company, I'll find my home, find my place in life. But then inevitably, that's never fulfilling, right? So people are lost. They're always looking, but they may not find it if they're not on the right path. Contemplate on how often do I mindfully act when I'm doing my daily tasks. Every day we do so many things. Yeah, we get up, we dress, we set up the bed, I brush my teeth. How often? When was the last time you brushed your teeth mindfully throughout? I don't know if I ever did that, right? So that's some insight we can get from the first section, right? Do everything with mindfulness. Now, it's gonna take conscious effort at first until it becomes a mindful habit. So next time you wash your hands, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you take a shower, try to be mindful from beginning to end. And you will find you're not able to do that. Because the consciousness is like a kid. Hey, pay attention to me. I need some attention. They always jump in, right? So it's not easy to remain mindful and let the consciousness thoughts rest for even 3 minutes. It's not easy. And that's what we need to learn from the first section. And can my actions be a form of education for others? So Buddha teach by action too. Buddha teach in so many different modes, different ways. He can teach by action. I kind of realized that when I met the Grandmaster, how he seemed to always be so mindful and graceful in whatever he does. And I never met a person like that. You all have heard the story where Shariputra was converted to Buddhism when he met one of Buddha's disciples, Ajita. The way he walked was so elegant, so graceful. And Shariputra, being very, very smart and knowing all the teachings of India at the time, he was moved. And then he thought he knew something I didn't know. It seems that he found the home, which I haven't found. He found the abiding place. That's how he can be so at peace. And with all this knowledge that Shariputra had, he didn't have that peace. He knew something that I didn't. That's why he became a Buddhist, became a monk. And when I met my master, that story always seemed a little bit exaggerated. just by walking? Come on, right? But when I met my master, I thought, well, that's a real story because that's how I feel. He knew something I certainly do not. And it's not some knowledge, it's some realization. All right, so these are some of the ways you can contemplate deeply on the first section. And cultivation, how do you put it into practice? Well, easy. Not easy. You can think of your own ways. But for example, starting tomorrow or tonight, for the next 7 days, brush your teeth mindfully and see how well you can do that. At the end of 7 days, reflect on it. You will see where you need to improve, right? And certainly it doesn't stop with brushing the teeth. You can do as many as you want. So that's one way to practice the first section. And a little bit more advanced cultivation will be practice walking, eating, and so on with the understanding of both emptiness and dependent arising. So, wait. What was that in the first section? Well, it is in there, right? Because the Buddha went out and interacted with people, and by the virtue of interacting with people, he's doing bodhisattva practice. It's dependent origination, dependent arising. He's creating opportunities for bodhisattva practice. And when he returned, he sat down. His mind returned to stillness. So he's demonstrating the importance of stillness. That's the nirvana path. So he's doing both. But then we know that to the Buddha, these two practices are not separated, right? Okay, now I do my bodhisattva practice and now I do my nirvana, nirvana. No, to the Buddha, he's totally integrated. It's what we call the non-abiding nirvana. Yeah, the non-abiding nirvana. Where everything you do, whether you're still of emotion, your mind is totally at peace. There's no defilement whatsoever. We are not there, so that is our aim. And we can begin by practicing walking and do this contemplation. How walking itself is a dependent arising phenomena. When we do walking meditation, you do realize, or have you realized, what does it take to be able to take one step, right? It takes all of your bones, your skins, your muscles, your tendons, everything working together to be able to take one step. Before I was a monk, I was studying AI, and you know how difficult it is to design a robot that can walk upstairs? A little baby can do that, but it's an extremely difficult task. And the reason is that your body automatically work in harmony to make that happen. It's very much an interdependent thing, not just your feet, right? So simply walking, you can see the interdependent, and therefore the emptiness of something we call taking a step, right? So that would be a little more advanced practice that we can do because of the inspiration of the first section. Any questions? All right, let's go on to the second section, how the Buddha guides us. I will read the text. Then the elder Shibuti in the assembly arose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, knelt on his right knee, with his palms joined, and respectfully addressed the Buddha. How remarkable, World Honored One, that the Tathagata is ever mindful of the Bodhisattvas, protecting and instructing them well. World Honored One, when good men and good women resolve to attain Anuttara Samyuk Sambodhi, how should they abide, and how should they subdue their minds? The Buddha said, excellent, Shibuti. It is as you have said, the Tathagata is ever mindful of the Bodhisattvas, protecting and instructing them well. Now listen attentively, and I shall explain it for you. Good men and good women who resolve to attain Anuttara Samyuk Sambodhi should thus abide and subdue their minds. Yes, World Honored One, we're listening with great anticipation. Okay, that is the second section. And there's something odd already. And we already talked about the first one. The Shibudi began by, how remarkable, you instruct them so well when Buddha haven't said anything, right? But we already talked about that. So he was able to see how Buddha teach in different modes, by action, by words, and what else? So this is just about how Buddha educate people. Buddha has a system education, you know. So one is teaching by action or teaching by example, by how he acts. And the second is teaching by words, right? That's nothing unusual. And the third is teaching by environment. You set up an environment, the monastery environment, and that will be different from a lay center, right? Why is that important? That is so important. You see in this environment, you see the Buddha statue, you see other monastics, and then you interact, you do your daily life in a certain way that is befitting of a monastery. That's the environment. It's just like when you go to school. The school has rules, right? So that's the environment. You home teach, you got to set up an environment of teaching. This is the environment. That's the third mode of teaching. And there's also teaching by regulation. You got to have rules, certain regulations. So we have the precepts and we have the monastic regulations, right? The way we conduct a certain event. And just like school has school rules. For those of you who are lay people, are there house rules? You should. You think about setting up house rules so that you can raise your children in an environment that is suitable for how you want to raise your children. You got to have guidelines and regulations, right? These are the four modes of instruction. But there's another mode which Chan Buddhism emphasizes is the mind. How do you guide them? How do you guide their mind? So this goes to this part where the Buddha is ever mindful of the bodhisattvas. How do you the mind, for example, you think about them. They are people you care about, right? Whether you're monastic, in which case you care about everyone, all beings, or lay people, you care about your family, you care about your friends, you care about people close to you. You are thinking of them, you care about them. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that well? How do you guard them? How do you guide them? How do you care for them in a skillful way? And that's why Buddha is remarkable. He does that in a very skillful way. Right? So that's one mode of teaching, how Buddha is skillfully mindful of others. And for example, Venerable Children, she has set up certain rules, certain regulations. A lot of it is similar to other monasteries, and some of them is not. That means she thought about it carefully. How I'm going to educate and train the Sangha here. And it's just like my master who came out with these sayings, these guidelines, this system of teaching. It is through careful thinking, careful, mindful thinking, how should I care about them, that you set up these things. And that's really important, right? You don't just blindly follow the tradition. Well, you could, and you'll be doing pretty well probably. But then you can go the extra mile, extra kilometer, and then you would think about times have changed. Culture is different. What do I do to modify the tradition while keeping the essence, right, of the past masters? You got to keep the essence. You can't lose the essence. But adapting it so that the people of this culture, of this generation, can better be instructed, right? That's skillfully minding your students Okay? So that leads to the next question. There are people that I care about. There are people who I guided or instructed. Yeah? Have I done that in a skillful manner? Were there times when I want to help somebody and then had a negative result? Has that happened to you? Probably. Happened to me, certainly. Happened to probably all of us. We had the motivation. We want to help them, but then it just turned out in a poor way. That happens all the time, right? Why? Why don't you understand that I care about you? I'm doing this for your own good. Yeah? So then the skillfulness, the skillful mindfulness becomes important. What does that involve? How does Buddha become so skillful in caring? And what do we lack, right? One easy answer is that I help them in the way that I think they should be helped, as opposed to in the way that they needed to be helped, right? You know, to understand how they need to be helped, we need to exchange our position. We need to put ourselves in their position and try to understand what's their dependent origination, how they come to be this way, what's in their background, what's in their past experiences. I'll try to understand that to better understand how they need to be helped, right? So that's part of the skillfulness training. So that's an insight we can get from the second section. Yeah, even before the Buddha starts. Oh, Buddha is skillful. Why is he skillful? Why am I not? Right? Okay. And so that immediately turns into a practice, right? Reflect on the past example where I meant well and didn't turn out well. How could I, if I had a chance again, how would I fix that? How would I redo it, right? That becomes a meditation. That becomes a practice. And then you can also look into the future. I know that I will be teaching this, or I will be helping the other person. Can I do it in a skillful way? So you think about it. Can I do it in a skillful way? Can I do it better? Or even better, right? That's the difference between a great teacher and an okay teacher. The great teacher always think about, how can I improve on my mode of instruction? How can I explain it in a way that make it easier for them to understand, to grasp the teaching? How can I teach them in a way that they can not just listen, not just acquire, but they also absorb and then put into practice? That's challenging, right? That is very challenging. Okay, and then of course there's a question about abiding or subduing the mind, and that's kind of a kind of an issue when we study Dharma Sutra in the Chinese translation. Shifu asks, how should such a good man and good woman who have made the bodhicitta resolve, how should it abide their mind, how should it subdue the mind? But in the next part, in the section 3, Buddha begins by saying this is how they should subdue their mind. And then in section 3 is where Buddha says, this is how they should subdue their mind. All the bodhisattvas should make the vow to liberate all sentient beings, and when they have liberated countless sentient beings, they haven't liberated anybody yet. That's how they should subdue their mind. And then in the next part, Buddha says these bodhisattvas should abide in dana practice. That they should practice dana, or practice giving, by not abiding anything. This is how they should abide. They should abide by not abiding anything. Okay, so why the Shifu asks abiding and subduing, but the Buddha answers in reverse? Although I don't think that is such an important issue. I can certainly explain it, but I'm not going to talk too much about it. You can think about it. Another thing, oddity is maybe oddity, maybe not. So the Buddha began to answer. Buddha says, first of all, Buddha is not humble. He said, yes, as you said, the Tathagata is ever mindful of the bodhisattvas and protecting them, instructing them well. You find that the Buddha is not very humble. Why? Why not? Why? Well, because the Buddha, as it is said later in the Diamond Sutra, Buddha speaks the truth. Buddha speaks as it is. Buddha does not, go roundabout. So it is the truth. It is the truth. Buddha has done it. And that's one of the reasons you should learn from the Buddha. All right? So there's no need to be pretentious. Now listen attentively, Buddha said, and I shall explain it to you. Good man and good woman should resolve to attain that ultimate enlightenment, should thus abide and subdue their minds. Now, the way it normally goes is that the Buddha continued to explain how should they do that, right? But then Subhuti cut in, sort of. Subhuti said, yes, we're waiting. What does that mean? That means, some people interpret, that means that Buddha just paused there. He said, this is how you should thus abide and thus subdue your mind. Yes, we are waiting. Okay, and that's why Subhuti said that. Yes, we're listening with great anticipation. So that we interpret, or I interpret, as to mean that, okay, Buddha actually have finished his teaching. Thus, or suchness, this is how you should abide your mind. This is how you should subdue your mind, by being in suchness, or the way it is. Tathata, just the way it is. Tathagata, he who is in suchness. It's just the way it is. So, one of the Chan teaching is that, Buddha has taught many, many things, but it comes down to one thing, just the way it is, suchness. It is just suchness. In other words, when you see reality, when you see the world as it is, that is enlightenment. Problem is we don't. We consciously distort what we see. We are biased. We follow the desire, where we pursue, like the teaching this morning, we pursue what benefits us for eons and eons, it only leads to misery. That's not suchness. We haven't seen the reality as it is. So all a person has to do to become a Buddha is to see as it is, to be as it is. No more, no less, like the Heart Sutra says. Neither arising nor ceasing, neither impure nor pure, neither increasing nor decreasing. We're always increasing something. We're always adding something to the experience, right? Food, when you're hungry, you eat. This tastes good. Better than yesterday. The kitchen staff have improved. Or, who cooked today? We're adding something to the experience, right? One of the features of the Buddha, one of the miracles of the Buddha was that whatever the Buddha tasted, it tastes wonderful. It's like ambrosia, right? The best food ever. That is a result, a reward. What do you think the cause is? How does Buddha came to have this amazing blessing that whatever he tastes is the most greatest food? Well, the cause probably is that he just treats all the food equally. He never discriminates against the food, and as a result, everything is beautiful, it's wonderful, it's the best tasting. Does that make sense? Yeah? So we always adding something. Sometimes we subtract something from the experience. Yeah? We subtract something from the experience. we fail to recognize the incredible. For example, when we listen to a lecture, oh, his teaching is kind of boring. He talks in a monotone, and and I heard this before. You are both adding something and subtracting something, right? You fail to recognize the kindness of that teacher's motivation. You fail to recognize the incredible condition that he had to put together in order to produce that teaching. Yeah, you fail to recognize the plain words. The plain words have so much meaning in it. Yeah, in my effort to teach the Dharma ever more clear and simple, I have begun to receive feedback. Shifu, you're just saying the same thing. We already understand this. Teach something more profound. I just smile. Okay. Yeah. So we adding or subtracting. So just the way it is. So by this part of this Diamond Sutra, Buddha already taught the Diamond Sutra twice. First is through action, right? Second, suchness, complete. But then Shibuti, even though he may have realized that, he is compassionate. He knows that most people haven't gotten yet. So please, Buddha, please elaborate. And that's why we have the following teaching, thanks to Shibuti. All right, so let us look at the ABC of the second section. Mentally review the points, the important points that you have learned from this section. Now, it has been proven in education theory, in psychology, that when you learn something and you try to remember it, remember the important points in your mind, that help you retain it, help you turn it into long-term memory. Yeah? Instead of just always taking notes and then looking at your notes, no, you just try to remember it, right? That's part of mindfulness. All right. Absorb. How can we think about this, contemplate on this second section? So we already talked about that a little bit. How have I been mindful or skillfully mindful of caring about others, thinking about others? Have I been skillful in instructing others? Be honest, right? Be honest to yourself. And both positive and negative examples are helpful, right? Reflecting our past and learn from it. And where you think you have failed, think about how you can do it better. And then if you don't know where to start, well, start with the Diamond Sutra. What are some examples in the Diamond Sutra, in the entire Diamond Sutra, where Buddha was skillful in his teaching? Or where Shibuti was skillful? Shibuti taught a lot, right? Good teaching there. How was Buddha and Shibuti's interaction was skillful? So you can try to find examples of skillful teaching in the Diamond Sutra in many places. All right? And so reflect on also how much of suchness do I understand and how much of that can I apply? That's kind of a more advanced contemplation, but don't be afraid of it. All right. Actually, I'm trying to encourage a professor of education in Taiwan to do a study or write a book about the Buddha's system of education. That would be interesting. Comparing with our current, theories of education. I think that Buddha has, you can definitely write a book about it. All right, so the cultivation part is pretty straightforward. Practice skillful mindfulness. how you can be more skillful in caring about others, how you can try to understand. One of the things I had to face many times when I was in the Zen Center or Sunnyvale was that a parent will bring their teenage kid to my office. Shifu, get some sense into that kid. he's not listening to his mom, and he's doing bad in school. Talk to him. So now I have never met the kid, and the kid certainly doesn't want to talk to me, right? How can you conduct a conversation where it will be helpful for the kid, right? You really have to start with something that the kid is interested in, and quickly, right? All right, so there's plenty of practice that we can do from the second section, yeah? All right, are we ready to move on to the third section? Now we get to the core of the teaching with words. So the Buddha said to Shibuti, the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas should thus subdue their minds. All the different types of sentient beings, whether they are born from eggs, from wombs, from moisture, or by transformation, whether or not they have form, whether they have thoughts or no thoughts, or have neither thought nor non-thought, I will liberate them by causing them to enter nirvana without remainder. And when these immeasurable, countless, infinite number of sentient beings have been liberated, in actuality, no sentient being has been liberated. Why is this so? Shibuti, if bodhisattvas abide in the notions of a self, a person, a sentient being, or lifespan, they are not bodhisattvas. Okay, so now we see example. Why is this so? Why is it that when you have, let's say you are pretty good at liberating sentient beings and you bring them to nirvana, many of them, right? You haven't liberated anyone. Now that's puzzling, certainly, right? That's puzzling. Why? Let me explain. If you have the notion of a self, a person, a sentient being, or lifespan, you're not a bodhisattva. Oh, now I see it. Do you? Well, it's not so easy, right? All right, so there's a lot of teaching in there, but Buddha doesn't explain too much. And that's one of the characteristics of many sutras. They begin with the deepest teaching, and then it gets easier, easier. Unlike a worldly textbook, where we begin with the very simple definitions and things, and then you build on top of that and it gets harder and harder. Many sutras I have read start with the most profound teaching, and it's done, if you get it. But if you don't get it, read on. And it gets progressively more elaborate or more words. And then eventually, the Buddha tell you, just chant Amitabha Buddha. And you'll be all right. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, so let's start from the beginning of the section. The Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas should thus subdue their minds. So this is pretty clear. You want to attain Anuttara Samyasambhava. You want to become a Buddha. This is what you do. This is absolutely the thing you have to do, is that you want to liberate countless sentient beings, basically. You want to bring them to parinirvana, right? You want to bring them out of suffering. You want to help them achieve complete annihilation of suffering. That's what you need to do. Okay, that's clear enough. But wait, once you have done that with many, so you're very good at this, right? You haven't helped anybody at all. Now, that is it's really something you need to think about, and it's not obvious at all. Even though we have been studying Prajnaparamita for many years, it's still not so obvious. Of course, it's true because the Buddha said it, but then to be very, very clear about this is hard. It is hard. So the Buddha actually offers a slightly easier teaching, something more specific, which is not to have any notion of a self, a person, a sentient being, and life event. Now that's a little more specific, right? Okay, now there's a plan of attack. Here's where I start. If I'm aiming to be a bodhisattva and I have this notion of a self, meaning, hey, I liberated you. Look how many people I liberated. Look how many disciples I ordained. Right? How many lay disciples took refuge with me, right? You obviously have the notion of a self. It's so deeply rooted, and you have the notion of a person. Hey, I liberate you. So I and you are a person, right? And look, be very careful with animals. Yeah, let's not kill the animals. Let's save the animals. Be a vegetarian. Look how many animal life will spare, right? So sentient beings, the notion of a sentient being, which includes humans and non-humans. And certainly when we have a notion of self, a person, or any sentient being, a horse, a dog, a pig, a cockroach, and when we have these notions, then it gets really complicated. All this discrimination come around, right? Human beings are more important than other life forms, or dogs, cats, and pandas should be loved, and pigs and cows and chickens, they deserve to be killed. If we just pause for a moment, you can see how ridiculous that notion is, right? If you put a baby in a room with little chicks and little pigs, piglets, and little kitty and puppy, do you know who should be eaten? Do you think the baby know who should be eaten and who he should play with? No, it's a preconceived notion, right? It's a bias that people have taken for granted, but it makes no sense whatsoever. So like we talked about this morning, we have so many preconceived notions, and they all go back to the notion of a person or a self, a being, right? And when we have a notion of a being, a life form, then of course everything is impermanent. The body decays. So then we have a notion of a self, of a lifespan, and that leads to the fear of death, because everybody must face death, and that leads to the fear of death, the worry, the anxiety, and then life gets really complicated. Our afflictions, defilements, everything come out. So Buddha did us a great service by pointing out that the very source of all of our afflictions and defilements, klesha, is the self. Okay, so now we have a direction. Let's try to understand self. So that's good. But you see this going from a general principle. The general principle to become a Buddha is to liberate all sentient beings without the notion of a sentient being being liberated. That is the general principle. This is the core. That's the core of Diamond Sutra. Right there is the core, the very essence, teaching of the Diamond Sutra. But then it will take many more words to elaborate on that so that we can gain something fruitful, right? Even somebody as advanced as Shibuti, who is already an arhat, needed the following teachings. Remember, at some point, Shibuti was moved to tears. He said, of all that I know about the wisdom eye is the eye to understand prajna. I have never heard such profound teaching. He was moved to tears. All right, that was later. Even Shibuti needed further teachings, but here is it. This is the core. And then Buddha realized that the general principle is too abstract, and we need something more specific. So Buddha gave you something more specific. Let's start with the notion of self and others. Okay. There's another example of this general principle and specific example, and that is in the second paragraph. All the different types of sentient beings, whether they are born from eggs, from womb, this device was being used. Buddha could have said, all the different types of sentient beings, you should liberate them. Logically, that's it, right? That's the same. But then Buddha went through the trouble of saying those being born from eggs, from wombs, from moisture, by transformation, by the different form, whether they have no form or thoughts. Why did the Buddha list them out? As if Shibuti doesn't understand, he already understands that there are all these different forms of living beings. It is to make it clear, more grounded. For example, we have the 4 great vows. You have a version of the 4 great vows. Our version goes like this: countless are sentient beings I vow to liberate. I think I listed down there. Countless are sentient beings I vow to liberate. Endless are afflictions I vow to eradicate. Measureless are dharmas I vow to master. Supreme is the Buddha way I vow to attain. Yeah? So you have 4 great vows. That is something that every person with a bodhicitta resolve will make the 4 great vows. So we have all made our 4 great vows, but then that's a general principle. When you make the 4 great vows, I fully believe in it. That is, yes, definitely. I'm committed to it. But then you don't realize how not there we are until you look at specific examples, right? So here's a contemplation. Are there some people you just really don't want to liberate right now? Is there somebody you just get away from me? Yeah, and let me liberate those others. But I don't want to deal with this person right now. Wait a minute. The 4 great vows says countless are sentient beings. Every sentient being I want to liberate, right? How come? So only when we get down to the specifics do we realize where we are lacking in our practice, where our biases surface. So those born from the egg, those born from the womb, human beings are born from the womb. I like to liberate all human beings, but would you like to liberate a cockroach? Get away from me, right? So when you see a cockroach and suppose you are scared by a cockroach or a rat, was that the first thing you think about? Is it, I should liberate you and bring you to nirvana without remainder? Or get away from me, right? So this is what we see. Is through the general principle is really important. That is the guiding light, right? This is where we should go. But then only with specific examples, specific situations, do we ground our practice. We need to ground our practice. So this is something we can practice from the 3rd section. You just go through this 10 types of sentient beings. And of course, some of them we don't really see or we don't have interaction with, but with those that we have interactions with, for example, those ones with born from eggs, which are the cute ones you really like to liberate? Which are the ugly or scary ones that I dirty, ugly, I don't want to think about them. That is a practice. That is a contemplation. That is a practice. So you will see many examples of this general principle followed by specific situations in the Diamond Sutra and many, many other sutras. This device being used to ground our understanding and ground our practice. All right, so certainly I'm not going to a lot of details about the notion of no self, no person, no sentient being, and no lifespan. This is repeated many, many times, so it's obviously a very important teaching, but it's never clearly explained in the Diamond Sutra itself. So you have to get the teaching from somebody else, from somewhere else. Probably because Buddha was talking to Shibuti, and Shibuti is already an arhat. He already understood no self, no person, no sentient being, no lifespan. It's a given, but it's not a given for us. So we had to do some groundwork, right? All right, but we know that all the other three follows from the first one, right? No person, no sentient being, no lifespan. All of those misnotions come from the single notion of no self. Or put it in clearly, whoever you think you are is wrong. No matter what you think I is, it is not right. When you understand why no self, the teaching of no self or non-self, is not in contradiction of, hey, I'm sitting here, I'm talking, there's no contradiction. If you really understand, there's no contradiction at all. But it is certainly the most profound teaching that we absolutely have to understand. The teaching of emptiness and non-self. And we'll leave it for another day, right? So what happened in the third section? Buddha laid out the theoretical foundation of becoming a Buddha. This is how you become a Buddha, right? This is how you become a Buddha. You get it? No? Okay, let's continue. So then, this is the teaching, this is the principle. How do we get down to practice? So Buddha offered a slightly more specific teaching, but still that is very abstract. No self. Where do I start? That's where the next section comes in. That's where the next section comes in. They connect so well. All right, so third section, acquire. Let us review. Mentally, what are some of the important points in the third section? Why is this third section important? What kind of insight have I gained? All right, and now let us be specific. Which kind of sentient beings you do not want to liberate now? Be honest. Nobody's watching you except the Buddha and yourself. So be honest. This is where we... And you don't have to work on the hardest one, right? If you really hate cockroach, but you can deal with worms, then maybe start with worms. Or vice versa, right? Or let's start with people. There's somebody who I really disliked, but let me try really hard. Like our lunch sermon, before lunch, Venerable, what's her name? Venerable Samkin talked about how she really disliked her stepmother for so many years. But then because she had a continuous desire to work on it, and then one day just clicked. If she did not have that desire to work on it, then even if she hears the same teaching, it will not click, right? So it's like, the hen poking on the egg, and then the little chick poking from inside the egg. That's what happens. I want to love this person. And then the Bodhisattva's teaching will begin to resonate with you. Find examples that you want to work on. You don't have to work on the toughest one. You can work on a slightly easier one first. Somebody you don't dislike so much, but kind of annoys you. Try to really love that person, right? All right, and also give examples where you help someone but expected something in return. Even if it's only a thank you. Have we done that? No, I've been practicing Bodhisattva practice for a long time. When I help somebody, I really don't expect anything in return. Are you sure? Was there ever a time where you help this person and you said, let go, no big deal, and then a year later you needed some help from that person refuses? Didn't you forget that? So you realize what's happening right now, right? At the time, you think that you are completely selfless, you just wanted to help. But deeper inside, the self is still working there. And that's why a year later, when that person refused to help you, even though you helped them a lot, you get upset. How ungrateful. When you think that way, that means you actually expected something, it just didn't surface yet, right? So all of this deeper, subtle defilements are still working down there. And only when you are mindful and you try to be really mindful, maybe in some meditation session, you suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute. I didn't realize I had those expectations. I didn't realize I had such greed and anger within me. That really happens. At some point in your meditation or practice, you just realize, oh, I'm being such a nasty person. I didn't realize how you open a Pandora box. But that's actually progress. Don't hate yourself. That's actually progress when you see, oh my goodness. All right, so try to find examples from the past where that happened. And then a little more advanced contemplation. In what ways can you explain to yourself or to somebody else why a person is not a person? A very, very good practice is to try to explain something you think you know to other people. Right? That is an excellent way of practicing, because when you try to explain, it has to make sense. And then a lot of times we think we understood, but we didn't really sort it out clearly. But when we try to explain to somebody, at some point you get stuck. Yeah, just believe that. But that means you haven't fully understood clearly. So teaching is actually a great way to learn. And also teaching a 10-year-old kid. That's another great way to learn, a great way to practice. If you don't have a 10-year-old kid here, you can imagine a 10-year-old kid. Imagine you're teaching to a 10-year-old kid. Okay, so that's something you can help practice. Cultivation, so just what we already said. Oh, wait, here's a practice inspired by the third section. Buddha gave everybody a long-term goal. So do you have a long-term goal? If you have made the Bodhisattva resolve, then you already have a long-term goal, right? But it's also useful to get down to the specifics. So have a long-term goal, but then also have some shorter-term goals. For example, how would you like to see yourself 3 months from now? Is this something you want to work on? Something you want to improve in 3 months? That's feasible, right? That's practical. So identify something and make a plan from what you know of the Dharma to help you make that possible. Or even 1 month. Or even 7 days. Brushing your teeth, being mindful, right? You can make that a short-term goal. So you can make a short-term goal for 7 days, for a month, for half a year, for 1 year, for 5 years. Where would you like to be in your cultivation 5 years from now? Think about that. And write it down. Write it down in your cultivation journal. Everybody has a cultivation journal, right? Write down your cultivation journal. Whatever you learn, put the main points in your cultivation journal. Whatever you don't understand about the Dharma, write a question down in the cultivation journal. Whatever insight you get in any situation, write it down in your cultivation journal. And then every once so often, like once a week or once a month, go back and read your cultivation journal. You'll be surprised how many insights you had and you've forgotten. Seriously. We have learned so many things and forgotten so many things. But you'll also be surprised, say, a year from now, there'll be questions that you didn't understand in the journal, and now it's very clear to you. Okay? So make your plans in your cultivation journal, and actually you have the freedom to change the goal anytime you want. So I can make a 5-year goal, but then 1 year down, you say, well, that's not that feasible. Now I realize how difficult it is. Let me modify it. You can do that, of course. You have the freedom to do that. Okay, second practice inspired by the third section is practice metta meditation, meditation of compassion. on those sentient beings that you don't really care about right now. And more advanced, meditate on the emptiness of the self to the extent that you understand it. So these are all practices we can get from the third section so far, right? All right, let's move on to the fourth section. Furthermore, Shibuddhi, in the practice of charity, bodhisattvas should abide in nothing whatsoever. That is, to practice charity without abiding in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dhammas. Shibuddhi, bodhisattvas should practice charity this way, without attachment to anything. Why? If bodhisattvas practice charity without attachment, their merits are immeasurable. Shibuddhi, what do you think? Is the space in the eastern direction measurable or not? No, Lord Honored One, it is immeasurable. Shibuddhi, is any of the space above or below in the four cardinal directions or in the four intermediate directions measurable? They are immeasurable, Lord Honored One. Shibuddhi, the merits attained by bodhisattvas who practice charity without attachment are also immeasurable like space. Shibuddhi, the bodhisattvas should abide in this teaching. Now, this very short section also has a lot of teaching. First of all, we see the example of general principle and specific practice here. Do you see it? Buddha says, Shibuddhi, start your practice to Buddhahood with dana paramita, right? With dana, with giving. Bodhisattva, but this is how you should practice, as opposed to an ordinary person who also gives, right? A bodhisattva should abide in nothing whatsoever. Bodhisattvas should abide in nothing whatsoever when you practice dana, when you practice giving. That's the general principle, right? This is the core of how you practice the 6 paramitas. And of course, we know that practicing the 6 paramitas, giving, shila, right? Moral conduct, patience or tolerance, diligence, meditation, and wisdom. This is how you practice to become a Buddha. So when Buddha says practice dana, you know that he's already taking a specific example. What he really means is the 6 paramitas, right? So practice the 6 paramitas without abiding in anything. That's what Buddha wanted to say. All right, but let's take dana as the specific example. Let's be more specific. Okay, so let's practice giving. Now everybody knows how to practice giving. But how do we practice giving without abiding or attachment to anything? So that is a general principle. But let's be more specific. That is to practice charity without abiding in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dhamma. You see how Buddha gets more specific? All right, now we, as the reader, as a student, it is our task to not just read this and say, okay, I get it. You got to think about it. How do I practice dana without abiding in form? Now, this is the contemplation you have to do, right? What is form? Whatever we see. Do we practice giving being attached to form? We do, right? Okay. Can we get an example? Can somebody give an example? How have we or others wanted to help, wanted to give, wanted to be compassionate, but they are attached to form, attached to how they look, basically, in English. This is how we're attached to how they look, right? So I'm sure you can all give plenty of examples. Yeah? This person is young and so cute, and then it brings up your sympathy immediately. The other person, he's big and dirty looking and smelly. Let me walk away for now. So that's an example of practicing dana or wanting to practice dana attached to form, right? Okay. So, and we want to save the animals. but only the cute ones. Certainly not chicken. Why? Because they taste good. Okay, so we do get attached to forms. So find examples. When you read a teaching in the Dharma, find examples. Find 3 examples. That's how we absorb. That's how we go deeper. That's how we make the teaching real to us. Yeah? Find examples of giving while attached to the form. But also find examples of giving without attachment to form. Yeah? Can you find examples of that? Maybe, probably. Maybe you see another practitioner, right? Oh, that person, that action was an example of giving or being compassionate without attachment to form. Yeah? So there was a story of a Korean baby. She was born without legs. She had up to her knees. And then she only had 2 fingers on each hand. Real story. She was born this way. 4 fingers total, up to the knees and no more. And then when she was born, of course, the Korean mom, she was advised by many of her friends, give her up for adoption. The Americans will adopt her. But she decided, no, I will raise her as my own daughter. And as she grew up, she became interested in the piano, and she actually became a pretty decent pianist with only 4 fingers. And she went around in Korea, giving concerts. So now there, in this story, you have examples of compassion without form and with form, right? With attachment. All right, so you got to come up with your own examples from your own life. That's how the teaching becomes real to you. And then, of course, you want to reflect on yourself. Where have I been attached for? Where have I been attached to taste? That's really easy for Chinese. We get so attached to food, right? In comparison, maybe Americans are not so attached to food because their food is so... Just kidding. All right, so we do get attached to form and sound. Yeah, for sound. Yeah, if one particular Dharma teacher's voice is very nice, I love to listen to this teacher's talk. The other person's voice is kind of boring or monotonous or scratchy. Maybe I'll pass. That happens. So we want to find examples of attachment, even though you want to be giving, you want to be compassionate, but we are attached to form, sound, smell, taste, touch. Is this good fabric? Is it comfortable? Soft, good bed, or hard bed? And also to dharmas, meaning thoughts. We get attached to thoughts. All right, so it's up to us to come up with examples for all of them. So Bodhisattva should practice this way without attachment to anything. All right, so the next part, that's pretty clear, right? That's pretty clear. So in this section, Buddha turned this lofty goal, this beautiful ideal goal of liberating countless sentient beings without liberating anybody, down to the practice level. This is what you do. Right? This is what you do. So now we have the principle and we have the practice, how they go together so well. All right. And now there's another profound teaching there. If the Bodhisattva practice this way, without attachment, the merits are immeasurable. Do you believe that? Yeah, of course. But why? Why? Well, we need to think about this. Now, Are there such thing as immeasurable, infinite merits? Do we, as Buddhists, do we believe in eternal hell? Somebody who committed an act so horrendous that he will go to hell forever. Is there such thing? No, there isn't, right? You go to hell if you have done very bad things, but after a certain time, or maybe a very long time, you get out. You have another chance, because no karma is infinite. It is, in a way, measurable. It's finite, put it this way. Okay? So you could be in hell for eons, but then you will get out. You will have another chance. And you will probably be born as hungry ghosts, and then animals, and then human beings. And then you get a chance to bring forth the bodhicitta, yeah, and become a Buddha. And similarly, if you have done such great karma, you give away so many eons and so many jewels, precious things, filling the whole world, you may go to heaven, one of the celestial realms for a long time, but eventually will fall down, right? There's no eternal heaven, there's no eternal hell. So how can there be such a thing as infinite merit? How does that make sense? First question. Second question, why does giving without attachment lead to infinite merit? Is it explained? No. Buddha, it sounded like Buddha gave an explanation. Oh, look, the space in the eastern direction. Is it measurable? No, it's not measurable. See? Your merit will be like that, immeasurable. Oh, I get it. No, you don't get it. But Buddha did make what he meant by infinite or immeasurable more clear, right? Immeasurable merit, I can't even think about it. Oh, look how infinite the space is. Oh, now I have some idea. That's what he accomplished. But he actually did not explain why non-attachment lead to infinite merit, or what infinite merit is. How is that possible? But, however, this is explained later in section 8, which is where the Buddha says, do you remember a passage where he says, all the Buddhas and the Dharmas come from the Diamond Sutra, come from this sutra. There was a passage later. That is where he explains this. But still, you have to connect the dots. All right, so let's just take a moment. Oh, we are running out of time. So maybe you should just think about it on your own. All right, I will say a little bit more about infinite merit. What is infinite merit? We already know that whatever we gain, we'll lose it, right? Whatever is conditioned will, because conditions change, will fall apart. So you never really possess anything, you never gain anything, you never lose anything, right? So all of that is impermanent, and all the conditioned phenomena is impermanent. So there's no such thing as infinite good karma, or is there? Because whatever you gain through your efforts, you will lose them, like merits, good karma, bad karma. So what can you not lose? Something that you already had. Something that was already there since beginningless time. Is there such a thing? Well, there better be. You can call it Buddha nature. You can call it Tathagata Garbha. But those are different systems of teaching. Not prajna paramita, but still, it can work. Whatever is not made, whatever is not conditioned, will not go away, right? So whatever is unconditioned, you discovered that within you, which is unconditioned, then it's like you have immeasurable merit because you never lose it. You will never lose it. And it's that which free you from all the defilements. So it's all tied together. How do you free yourself from all the afflictions and suffering? By non-attachment, right? See? By practicing non-attachment. And by practicing non-attachment, you would understand no self. And by practicing no self while liberating sentient beings, you will achieve Anuttara Sammasambodhi. Done. Right? So, the Dhamma Sutra is done. No? Well, let's look at, you can look at the acquire, absorb, and cultivate section, ABC yourself. I need to quit pretty soon. So let's just take a look at the 5th section. Shibudi, what do you think? Can one recognize the Tathagata by means of his physical appearance? No, World Honor one cannot recognize the Tathagata by his physical appearance. Why not? The Tathagata teaches that physical appearances are actually not physical appearances. The Buddha said to Shibudi, all appearances are illusory. To see that appearances are not appearances is to see the Tathagata. All right, so in this section, Buddha all of a sudden brought up this question. So we're talking about dana paramita, right? Without attachment and infinite merits. And all of a sudden, Buddha brought up this question. What do you think? Can you recognize the Buddha by his appearance? By his 32 marks, right? We know the answer, no. But why is this related to the previous paragraph? This is what I call a jump. There's a jump here. There's a jump from the 4th section to this question, and from this question to see the appearances or not appearances is to see the Tathagata. There's a little bit of jump there again. All right? So you need to connect the dots. And I would say, by the end of this section, to see the appearances or not appearances is to see the Tathagata. End of Dhamma Sutra. Buddha has taught another round of Dhamma Sutra already, because what does it mean to see the Buddha? When you see the Buddha in person, is that seeing the Buddha? No, of course not, right? What does it mean to see the Buddha? Shibudi had an experience, right? You know that story. He saw emptiness. He was immersed in emptiness, and therefore he didn't have to go physically welcome the Buddha. He saw the Dhammakaya, the Dhamma body of the Buddha. He saw the truth body of the Buddha. He saw the real Buddha. Right? So, to see the Tathagata, to see the real Buddha, to truly see the Buddha is to see the truth, the ultimate truth. To see the Dhamma realm, to see what the Buddha sees, to be in touch, to realize the wisdom of the Buddha. That is to see the Buddha. Anything less than that is not, right? So when you see the Buddha, when you see the Tathagata, you realize the truth. That means you are enlightened. That means you are ensured of becoming a Buddha. Done. Right? Because from then on, you will know what to do. And you would definitely continue to practice the 6 paramitas without attachment. You will know how to do it. Right? Because you understand emptiness. And since all appearances are, or attributes, all attributes are empty, therefore, there's nothing to cling to. But of course, in awakening to this truth doesn't mean you have ended your defilement. There's still a lot of practice to be done. So, but at this point, you can teach the Dharma like a Buddha almost. By this point, the Dhamma Sutra is completed again. Okay? Agree? Think about it. You can certainly challenge me. I welcome challenges, but think about it. Think about that. Contemplate on that. All right, so let's go back to the question. Why did Buddha bring up this question of how to see the Buddha? Can you see the Buddha by his physical appearances? Well, actually, this question bothered me for many years. I would think that I'm trained as an engineer, so as scientist, engineer, everything, when you write a paper, everything needs to follow logically. So, now we're talking about dana paramita. I can see going from the principle to the practice. That makes sense. And then why is it immeasurable? I don't know yet. And then what is it all of a sudden about seeing the Buddha, right? It took me many years to see the connection. I think I see the connection now. You want to see it, or do you want to figure it yourself? Huh? Give you a hint. Okay. So in section 4, in the previous section, Buddha taught you what to do, right? How to start your practice. And you see that this practice, starting from not attached to form or sound, this is the beginning of non-attachment. And that will take you all the way. Starting from, meditating a cockroach, it will take you all the way to the triple emptiness, right? Emptiness of the giver, emptiness of the receiver, and the emptiness of the act, or the thing being given. That will help you realize prajna paramita. All right, so you see, Buddha gave you the principle, and Buddha gave you the practice already. All right, so now what is the thing that we get attached to the most? We as human beings, we get attached to the most. Physical appearances, right? Most of our desire come from that. So, physical appearances. So Buddha can talk about, okay, let's not be attached to the female form or the female form or whatever. But this is advanced sutra. So, what among all the human beings, among other persons, what is the most glorious physical appearances? It's the Buddha's. The Buddha's physical appearance is the most glorious, most magnificent. All right? So people who are sincerely wanting to become a Buddha, they only know that I don't want to attach to human form. No matter how well I can do, I don't want to attach. But then we can get attached to the Buddha. We can get attached to the Buddha, right? Ananda was certainly attached to the Buddha. Oh, Ananda, why did you become a monk? Oh, I saw the glorious magnificence of the Buddha's physical form, and that's why I became a Buddha. That's why I became a monk. So we as practitioners, we who are intent on becoming Buddhas, we can get attached to the Dharma, we can get attached to the Buddha, we can get attached to the Buddha's physical appearance, right? Oh, I want to see Buddha. I want to touch the master. I want the master to touch me, right? These are our examples. Okay, you want to see the Buddha? Great, no problem. But I want you to see the real Buddha. See? So, using this example, the physical appearances is not the way to see the Buddha. That is the perfect bridge to go from the practice to realization. To go from our most serious attachment in one step to go to show you what is enlightenment. What is to see the real Buddha, to see the Dharma body of the Buddha, to see the ultimate truth. You want to see Buddha? Yes, this is what you want to see. And it goes very back to that non-attachment, right? We get attached to form, to appearances, because we think it's real. It's adorable, it's beautiful, it's sexy, it's whatever. It's scary. We get attached to appearances. So you see how well they link together? Go from non-attachment and non-attachment of appearances. The appearances in Sanskrit here is laksana, right? It's actually, it can mean form, physical form. It can also mean any attribute. But in English, we cannot really do that. So we have to go from physical appearance, which is laksana, to our appearances, or our attributes, or laksana. So you know that you don't want to be attached to physical form. Let's take a step further. You don't want to be attached to all forms. Let's take a step further. Let's not be attached to all attributes, any characteristic of anything, including a person. What is your personality? When you think you have a particular personality, that is, you have a set of defining traits, right? That's attribute, that's appearance. That is how you appear to be to yourself and others. So if we cannot attach to any of these appearances, any of these attributes, you see the Tathagata. You will be awakened. Done. I'm done. No, our time's up. So reading the Diamond Sutra this way is really fun. It's challenging, it's fun. It's almost, in some places it's like a detective story. But every time you probe it, you are just so amazed with how beautiful the sutra is and how intricate it is and how wise they are. Both Buddha and Subhuti. It's like two martial arts masters. When they have a fight, every move is amazing. That's in later. It's like that too. They understand each other so well, and then, yeah. Okay, maybe we just have a couple minutes for questions. And don't forget the ABC. Yes.
When you study a sutra like this, how does your teacher help you? Or do they leave you on your own to work out the connections? Or how does that work in your tradition?
I think mostly you work it out on your own. Even though I was with the master for like 10, 12 years, I just didn't want to bother him so much. So I felt, he's so busy, so important, and if I can figure this out, I will. But there were several times where I just couldn't figure things out, and then I go to him, and then, it will be a great experience. But I think it's really important to have the confidence in yourself that, hey, I can figure it out. And your ability improves. I learned that in grad school. I learned that in grad school, in college, in grad school, when you have to work out so many difficult questions, homework problems, and then you think, I can't do this, but you don't want to flunk, so you got to work on it. And over time, of that training, in college and grad school, you learn to bring out the potential in you. I believe that everybody has 10, 100 times more potential than they think they have. And when you are a problem solver, you want to solve the problems, then you will become better and better. Like Venerable Children, she had to face so many challenges, but then she would never give up, right? And that's how she become better and better at it. And that's true with everybody who have accomplished a great deal. So definitely don't think that, I can't do this. But there are times where you have to go ask your teacher. When you just can't get it, you can't figure out. Maybe one word, one sentence, one touch will put you on the right track. Yeah, but also try to work out as many problems as you can. Yes.
When you said that the sixth patriarch Huineng got enlightened when he read the Diamond Karta Sutra, does that mean that he became a Buddha?
No.
What does enlightenment mean?
So in Chan Buddhism, when we say enlightened, we really mean to awaken to what the Buddha knows, to what the Buddha sees. The core enlightenment is that my interpretation is two things. One, you understand emptiness of the self, right? Emptiness of the Dharma. You must understand emptiness. And also you understand that which is ever present and never gone and inherently pure. which is really the same thing. So in a Tathagata kind of way, you say, okay, you gotta understand what Buddha nature is. You gotta understand the pure mind, right? The original pure mind. But what many Chinese practitioners fail to realize that you also gotta understand the emptiness of it, the empty nature of the pure mind. So that is what is enlightenment. And that doesn't mean that you are an arhat, because arhat have cleared their defilements. But somebody who's awakened this way in the Chan Buddhism has not cleared away their defilement. They still need to work on it, but they understand what it means, and they are on a non-retrieving path, non-regressing path. Okay. So when the sixth patriarch, he was enlightened, he went in hiding for 15 years, and that's what we called nurturing the fetus. So you have the fetus of the Buddha. You are the fetus of the Buddha, but you gotta nurture it. You gotta overcome your karmic tendencies, karmic behavior, karmic reactions that were centered on the self. So the self will still pop up all the time, and you gotta be really, really mindful to immediately see through the emptiness of that. Okay. So it's you could still get egotistical, you could still get arrogant, you could still get angry when you are enlightened. But the difference is that before enlightenment, you can get trapped in that for a long time. After enlightenment, you as long as you remember, you are mindful of the emptiness of the self, you'll be able to penetrate that immediately, just like that. Okay, but still, it will suffer. The habitual afflictions, they take a long time to work on, to clear away.
If I could just take a minute, because I think this is the explanation probably is not is confusing to people here, because we have a different, you could call it definition of enlightenment. So I remember when Venerable Shenyan had a dialogue with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, this topic came up, and Venerable Shenyan explained that enlightenment was when you have your first penetration of actually seeing the true nature.
Right.
But you still have to go back and create merit.
Yes.
And do all the other practices and purification and more study and more meditation on emptiness. Yeah. So in the Chan, when they say enlightenment, it's not what we mean when we say enlightenment.
Well, I agree with that definition, actually.
Yeah. But I just explained the Chan way.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, because they already know the way that we see enlightenment.
So do you mean enlightenment by Buddha's enlightenment? By the perfect enlightenment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's we call it the unsurpassed complete enlightenment. So our head is enlightened, but it's not complete and unsurpassed. So that's actually another important point in the Diamond Sutra. Why Shibudi? So in the passage that follows immediately, Shibudi asks a very strange question: Buddha, the people in the future, will they believe in this teaching? For those of us who are used to Mahayana teaching, nothing special really. But then, for an arhat, who understand emptiness, Shibudi said, this is so hard to believe. Do you think people will believe it, right? And I think the point there is that being an arhat, he already understands the non-self. But the difference is they may not understand how to go from there to Buddhahood. And so in this section, it says, this is how you see the Buddha, and that means how you go to Buddhahood. This is how you see, when you see all appearances are not appearances. So what the arhat focused on was the self, okay? The self is empty. They understand that, they realize that. but they haven't applied the same teaching, which is exactly the same reasoning or teaching to all the dharmas, to all phenomena. They didn't need to, because they didn't have the bodhisattva vow, right? So as long as I focus on the self and understand emptiness of self, I can achieve emptiness. But it's actually exactly the same emptiness. There's no two kinds of emptiness. The same emptiness that applies to all phenomena. So if you apply that, which you do need to practice, you will gradually understand more of the interdependent nature and gain the skillfulness to help. But it's nothing you don't already know. You already know. You already got the crux. You already got the core. And that's what's amazing. We started out as as a Shravaka, we started out only want to liberate ourselves. But then when you do get there, you already got everything. You already got what it takes, the same understanding, to become a Buddha. And that's why he was so moved. He was so touched. But it's still a lot of work. I need to. It's one thing to understand empty nature of everything. It's nothing to be able to, for example, if I understand emptiness of a monastery, then if the monastery gets destroyed by a fire, I won't get so attached, right? I won't get attached. Oh, let's just build another one. Yeah, exactly. But it's not so easy. It takes a lot of work, going to government and contractors and learning all this. But all of that is empty. Right, you see? So understanding emptiness doesn't mean you are very comfortable with the dependent arising part of it. That's what the arhat need to do. But still empty. So they are still, not suffering. They just need to apply themselves. And that is what is really tricky and what is amazing to the arhat. So the Diamond Sutra actually have the same teaching as the Lotus Sutra. In the Lotus Sutra, where it says, all arhats, you didn't think you can become Buddhas. You're at the end of your practice. No, you can all become Buddhas. That's what the Lotus Sutra says. But the Diamond Sutra says the same thing, just not so obvious.
Say that he understands. Is that on the path? He's in the path of seeing.
Yes, it's not just knowledge. When you see the Tathagata here, it's not just knowledge. Oh, yeah, I get it. Oh, appearance, non-appearance, I can say that too. No, it's an experience. It's an actual penetration through the delusions of the self, right? So it is an actualization. It's an experience. It's not just knowledge. There's a difference. So what happens is that scholars or people who are very smart, intelligent, they can read the sutras and say, "Oh, I get it. I can explain it too." But they have no practice, so they don't actually understand the subtle defilements within them. They don't see that at all when they don't practice, and they think, "Oh, I'm enlightened. I can teach as better than the monks." That becomes really dangerous. Yeah. So when you see this, the empty nature, you should also at the same time understand how much more work there is. But it is beautiful. It is wonderful work. It is. Whereas before awakening, before that penetration, before awakening, you just don't know whether you get there, right? Because you don't understand emptiness of the self, and you just don't know when it's gonna happen. When you get there, am I good enough? You have all these doubts, and when you see it for the first time, you don't have doubts anymore. That's why you are on a non-regression path. You don't have any doubts anymore. That's why the Buddha. You realize Buddha speaks the truth. He never lies. He speaks the truth. This is a real thing. This is a real path. This is a real teaching. Nobody can deter you from that. And that's why you find where you return to abide in. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let us conclude with the dedication. May the merits generated from all of us studying the Dharma together be dedicated to all the beings who are suffering physically or mentally in this world right now. May they be freed from their suffering soon. And may the merits be dedicated to all sentient beings. May they have the chance to encounter the Dharma. May they all take the 3 refuges and embark on the Buddha path. And may they all achieve enlightenment. May the merits of all these reach every part of the world, sentient beings large and small, all attain enlightenment.